I'm Julian Assange.
Roger, I'll get you in constraint.
Editor of WikiLeaks. We've exposed the world's secrets.
These documents belong to the United States government.
Been attacked by the powerful.
The United States strongly condemns.
Hey, quit asking questions. He broke the law.
Illegally shoot the son of a...
For 500 days now, I've been detained without charge. But that hasn't stopped us.
Mike Deck.
Today, we're on a quest for revolutionary ideas that can change the world tomorrow. A furious war over the future of our societies is underway. To most, this war is invisible. On the one side, a network of governments and corporations that spy on everything we do. On the other, the cypherpunks, virtuoso geek activists who make codes and shake public policy. This is the movement which spawned WikiLeaks. I am joined by three cypherpunk friends. From Germany, Andy Muller-Magoon. From France, Jeremy Zimmerman. And from the United States, Jake Applebaum. I want to ask them, is the future of the world the future of the internet? I want to look at the three basic freedoms. So when I interviewed the head of Hezbollah, Hussein Nasrallah, had become...
Where's that fucking Jones, Craig?
There was a question...
What's that up there?
Well, he has his own kind of house arrest as well, because he can't leave his secret location. But
I'm not sure that I would make that comparison. Please don't make that comparison.
You can edit that out, right?
No. so I want to go back to these three fundamental freedoms: freedom of communication, freedom of movement, and freedom of economic interaction. So if we look at the transition of our global society onto the internet, when we made that transition, the freedom of personal movement is unchanged, essentially. The freedom of communication is enhanced tremendously in some ways, in that we now can communicate to many more people. On the other hand, it is also tremendously degraded because there is no privacy anymore, and so our communications can be spied on and are spied on and stored, and as a result can be used against us.
Privacy is available, but it comes at a cost, yeah.
Yeah, so in this sort of militarization of these sort of interactions. And our economic interactions have suffered precisely the same consequences.
Julian, it's not wrong what you're saying, but I'm not sure you can really distinguish between point 2 and 3. Because the internet, as we have it today, is infrastructure for our social, our economic, our cultural, our political, or our things.
Certainly.
So however the communication architecture is, the money is just bits. I mean, this is just a usage of the internet.
Yeah, and Andy, you've studied for years cryptographic telephones, secure phone calls, sort of mass surveillance is occurring in relation to telecommunications. Tell me, what is the state of the art as far as the government intelligence bulk surveillance industry is concerned?
Well, yes, mass storage, meaning storing all telecommunication has become...
So that's all voice calls? And
yeah, all voice calls, all internet connections. Actually, what you have to see is if you compare the military budget to the cost of surveillance and the cost also of cyber warriors, normal weapon systems cost a lot of money. If you compare that to cyber warriors or to mass surveillance, that is very cheap. That's super cheap compared to just one aircraft. One military aircraft costs you between...
100 million, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are two questions here. We also have this example of Eagle, the system sold by the French company Amasys that was sold to Gaddafi's Libya. And on the document that, the commercial document, it was written nationwide interception mechanism.
Yeah, that's a strategic approach.
Big box that you put somewhere and you just listen to all your people communication. So we can discuss about the technology, and I'm interested very much by that.
And this 10 years ago, this was seen to be a fantasy. This was seen to be something that only paranoid people believed in. But the costs of doing it have now decreased to the point where even countries like Libya, with relatively few resources, was doing it with French technology.
Exactly. So now that's a fact. Technology enables total surveillance of every communication. Then there is the other side of that coin, is what we do with it. We could admit that for what you call the tactical one, there are indeed some legitimate use. Investigators investigating on bad guys and networks of bad guys and so on may need, under the supervision of the judicial authority, to be able to use such tools. But the question is, where to draw this judicial supervision, where to draw the control that the citizens can have over the use of those technologies. And this is a policy issue. And when we get to those policy issues, and we were evoking that earlier, you have politicians that are asked to just sign something and don't understand the underlying technology.
Which is why we see so much hype about cyber war, is that some people that seem to be in the authority about war start talking about technology as if they understand it.
Exactly.
And you have all these people talking about cyber war, and not one of them, not a single one, is talking about cyber peace building or anything related to peace building. They're always talking about war because that's their business. And so they're trying to rope technology into that. And so when we have no control of our technology, we have these people that wish to use it for their ends, for war specifically, that's a recipe for some pretty scary stuff.
So I see that there's now a militarization of cyberspace because we have interception across all national border points, and we have militarized computer hackers operating on bulk with programs to attack sections of the internet and spy on sections of the internet.
May I oppose about the use of hackers in this context? You're talking about soldiers using computers as military means.
Yeah.
This is not hacking.
Yeah,
and this is not hackers.
All right, let's not get into the hacker definition. But the point is that we have civilian lives. We don't see tanks coming into the lounge. Well, this may be a special lounge room actually, but most people don't see tanks or bugs coming into their lounge room normally, or even down their local road. But now we take our personal lives and we put it all on Facebook. We communicate using the internet. We communicate using mobile phones, which are now meshed to the internet. And the military has control, or the intelligence agencies have control of that data and studying that data. So this is some kind of militarization of civilian life.
Absolutely.
There is a real question on whether or not we should regulate the fact of just buying and owning those technologies, or
so
using
the bulk interception kits that can intercept half a country or a city.
A nuclear weapon. You cannot sell that easily a nuclear weapon, and some countries who may want to build one may have problems or something. And that's the technology that is regulated and not the use that is being done with it when we talk about weapon systems. So I think the debate might be about whether or not these technologies should be considered as war materials.
Surveillance equipment is weapons, and I mean, there's no question that it is a weapon in places like Syria or in places like Libya. Right? They specifically use the surveillance equipment to target people politically. In Libya, they targeted people in the United Kingdom using French equipment that would be illegal to run in France, and they sold it knowingly.
They would never do that, right?
Well, they were caught with their own internal documents and the spy files, right?
State-sponsored surveillance is indeed a major issue. It challenges the very structure of our democracies and the way it functions. But is it the proper time now to evoke also that there is private surveillance and potentiality for private mass collection of data? And actually, just look at Google. Google knows, if you're a standard Google user, Google knows who you're communicating with, who you know, what you're researching, potentially your sexual orientation, your religious
more about you than you know yourself.
More than your mother, and maybe more than yourself. Google knows when you're online and when you're not.
Well, do you know what you looked for 2 years, 3 days, and 4 hours ago? Well, you don't know. Google knows.
No, but I try not to use Google anymore for these very reasons. But what I'm saying is it's not only the state-sponsored surveillance. It's the question of privacy, the way data is being handled by third parties, and the actual knowledge that people have over what is being made with the data.
Can you talk about Facebook as well, Jeremy?
Well, Actually, I don't use Facebook, so I don't know much about it. But no, with Facebook, you see the very same behavior of users who are very happy to hand out any kind of personal data. And of course, when you see teenagers, sending pictures of them being drunk or whatever, they may not have this vision that it means the whole rest of the world, potentially for a very, very long period of time, that will have access to this data. And so Facebook makes its business by blurring this line between privacy, friends, publicity, and is even storing the data when you think that it is only meant for your friends and the people you love.
This line between government and corporation, I mean, this is blurred. I mean, if you look at the expansion in the military contractor sector, in the West over the past 10 years, the National Security Agency, which was the biggest spy agency in the world, it had 10 primary contractors on its books that it worked with. Now it has, 2 years ago, it has over 1,000. So there's a spreading out, a smearing out of the border between what is government and
it can be argued that the US spying agencies have access to all of Google's stored data.
Well, they do.
And all of Facebook data. So in a way, Facebook and Google may be extensions of these agencies.
I mean, I know that
we just got two yesterday.
In our Twitter case so far, which unfortunately I can't really talk about because I don't actually live in a free country, which is it's a thing, right?
Because these orders also have a gag component. Yeah, so that's been found to be unconstitutional.
So maybe not, right? I mean, for the Twitter case, it's public that we lost the stay where we said that disclosing this data to the government would do irreparable harm, and they can never forget this data once they receive it. And the government said, yeah, well, your stay is denied. Twitter must disclose this data. And, we're in the process of appeal specifically about the secrecy of docketing. And I can't talk about that because we're in the process of appeal. But as it stands right now, the court found that they said on the Internet that you have no expectation of privacy when you willingly reveal information to a third party. And by the way, everyone on the Internet is a third party. And they said it was a one-to-one map with banking privacy and with, dialing a telephone. You willingly disclose the number to the phone company by using it. And you knew that, right? By using the telephone, you obviously are saying, I have no expectation of privacy by typing those numbers. I mean, there's even less explicit connection to the machine. People don't understand how the Internet works. They don't understand telephone networks either. But the courts have consistently ruled that this is the case. It's absolute madness to imagine that we give up all of our personal data to these companies, and then the companies have essentially become privatized secret police, where in the case of Facebook, we have democratized surveillance, and instead of paying people off the way the Stasi did in your country, we reward them as a culture by, they get laid now. They report on their friends, and then hey, so-and-so got engaged. Oh, so-and-so broke up. Oh, I know who to call now, right? And this is the difference between a privacy by policy and a privacy by design approach to actually creating secure systems. Yeah. I mean, when you're trying to target people, and you live in a country that explicitly targets people, if Facebook put its servers in Gaddafi's Libya or it put it in Assad's Syria, that would be absolutely negligent. So knowing that that's reality, that these companies have some serious ethical liability that stems from the fact that they're building these systems and they've made the economic choice basically to sell their users out. And this isn't even a technical thing. It isn't about technology at all. It's about economics. And they have decided that it is more important to collaborate with the state and to sell out their users and to violate their privacy and to be a part of the system of control, to be paid back for being a part of the surveillance culture, to be part of that culture of control, than to be resistant to it. And so they build it, they become a part of it. They're complicit and liable.
I want to look at this what I see as a difference between a US cypherpunk perspective and the European perspective, which I think is quite interesting. So the US Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. Just recently watching some footage that a friend shot in the US on the right to bear arms, and so right above a firearms store, it's democracy locked and looted. and that's the way you ensure that you don't have totalitarian regimes, that people are armed, and if they're pissed off enough, then they simply take their arms and they retake control by force. So if we look back to this declaration that code making, providing secret cryptographic codes that the government couldn't spy on, was in fact a munition, and this big war that we fought in the 1990s to try and make cryptography available to everyone, which we largely won, actually.
In the West.
Yeah, in the West, which we largely won, and it's in every browser, now perhaps being backdoored in different kinds and subverted in different kinds of ways. That this notion of you cannot trust a government to implement the policies that it says that it's implementing, and so we must provide the underlying tools, cryptographic tools that we control, as a sort of use of force, in that a government, no matter how hard it tries, if the ciphers are good, cannot break into your communications directly. Maybe can put a bug in your house or whatever.
Well, the force of authority is derived from violence. One must acknowledge with cryptography, no amount of violence will ever solve a math problem.
Exactly.
And this is the important key. It doesn't mean you can't be tortured. It doesn't mean that they can't try to bug your house or subvert it in some way, but it means if they find an encrypted message, it doesn't matter if they have the force of the authority behind everything that they do. They cannot solve that math problem. And this is a thing, though, that is totally non-obvious to people that are non-technical, and it has to be driven home. If we could solve all of those math problems, it would be a different story. And of course, the government will be able to solve those math problems if anyone could. But that's the difference, right? It's actually a thing that changes.
It's just a fact that it just happens to be a fact about reality, such like that you could build atomic bombs, that there are math problems that you can create that even the strongest state cannot directly break. And I think that was tremendously appealing to Californian libertarians and others who believed in this sort of democracy locked and loaded. And here was a very intellectual way of doing it, of a couple of individuals with cryptography standing up to the full power of the strongest superpower in the world. And we're still doing that a little bit, but I have a view that the likely outcome is that those are really tremendously big economic forces and tremendously big political forces, like Jeremy was saying, and that the natural efficiencies of these technologies compared to the number of human beings will mean that slowly we will end up into a global totalitarian surveillance society. By totalitarian, I mean a total surveillance, and that perhaps there will just be the last free living people. And these last free living people are those people who understand how to use this cryptography to defend against this complete, total surveillance. Are we headed for that sort of scenario?
But first of all, if you look at it from a market perspective, I'm convinced that there is a market in privacy that has been mostly left unexplored. So maybe there will be an economic drive for companies to develop tools that will give users the individual ability to control their data and communication. Maybe this is one way that we can solve that problem. I'm not sure it can work alone, but this may happen, and we may not know it yet. Also, it is interesting to see what you're describing is the power of the hackers, in a way. Hackers to the primary sense of the term, not a criminal. A hacker is a technology enthusiast, is somebody who likes to understand how technology works, not to be trapped into technology, and make it work better. Like, I suppose that you too, when you were 5 or 7, you had a screwdriver and tried to open devices to understand what it was like inside. No? So this is what being a hacker is. And hackers build the internet for many reasons, also because it was fun, and have developed it. And have given the internet to everybody else. So companies like Google and Facebook saw the opportunity to build business models based on capturing users' personal data. But still, we see a form of power in the hands of hackers. And what is of my primary interest these days is that we see these hackers gaining power even in the political arenas.
This political radicalization of internet youth over the past 2 years especially you've been all over the world talking about Tor, talking to people who want anonymity, want privacy in relation to their own government. I mean, you must have seen in many different countries this phenomena. Is it something significant?
Sure. I mean, I think it's absolutely significant. I went to Tunisia after Ben Ali's regime fell, and you see that there's a sort of awakening about that. But I think that you're wrong to say that it just happened in the last couple of years, and I'm sorry to do this to you on your own show, but you are part of the radicalization of my generation, right? I'm like a third generation cypherpunk if I were in that. And the work that you and Ralph did on the rubber hose file system was part of what inspired me to work on crypto systems. And the crypto file system he wrote was in response to things like the regulatory investigative powers in the United Kingdom, where basically the state has decided negative regulation is the solution to cryptography, where they can take your password. Of course, in Julian's case, when they created this, it was because oppressive regimes would torture people for passphrases. So you had to be able to give up different passphrases in order to comply with their torture. And I realized when I saw that this existed that you could use technology to empower everyday people to change the world. And the cypherpunks going back, I mean, this is really it goes far, far back. The old mailing list, the cypherpunk mailing list with Tim May, and reading your old posts on the cypherpunks mailing list, I mean, that's what started a whole generation of people really becoming more radicalized, because people realized that they weren't atomized anymore, and that they could literally take some time to write some software that if someone used it, they could empower millions of people. And there are just some unintended consequences with how that played out. Yeah. Because the people that created Google, they didn't start out to create Google to create the greatest surveillance machine that ever existed. But in effect, that is what has been created. And as soon as people start to realize it, they'll start sending in those national security letters, right?
I think there are three crucial points in what you just said.
Just three?
No, yeah, among others. One of them is authoritarian regime. And the powers that authoritarian regime have in an era of digital technologies. In the case of the Ben Ali regime, it is obvious, in so many regimes as of today, it is obvious that you can decide what people can learn about or who they can communicate with. And this is of tremendous power. And this should be opposed. And the internet, a free internet, is a tool for opposing that. Another that well, that's your area of expertise, and it's building tools, and building tools to building better technology that can try to root around such problems as censorship, but basically building tools that are part of that infrastructure that help us topple dictators like that. And yet another issue is the political storytelling. The pretexts that are used every day by politicians, through the media, we're all going to die of terrorism, therefore we need a Patriot Act, child pornographers are everywhere, there are pedo-Nazis all over the internet, therefore we need censorship.
Those damn pedo-Nazis.
Pedo-Nazis, yeah. Pedonazi.com is reserved already. And artists are going to die and there won't be cinema anymore, therefore we have to give Hollywood the power to censor the internet, and so on and so on. So I think here again, the internet is a tool, internet may be the antidote to that political storytelling. The political storytelling relies on emotionality and relies on the media term that is of extremely short span. One information appears and disappears 24 hours afterwards and is replaced by another, and so on. With the internet, I got the feeling that we're building what I call internet time. As the great internet never forgets, we can build over years, day after day, dossier, and we can elaborate, we can analyze. This is what we've been doing for the last 3 years with ACTA. And so we built our own political line with internet time, with precise analysis, with hard work, with connecting people together to participate in that.
We've won the narrative, but behind the scenes, secret bilateral treaties have been set up, which are achieving the same result anyway. It's just subverted the democratic process.
One thing that I think really has to be pointed out is that, and the people that are fighting against ACTA are, in fact, they are using technology, and the technology enables them to resist. But it is, in fact, the agency of everyday people that is important to understand here. And technobabble is not the thing that is important. What matters is people actually getting involved in that narrative and changing it. Well, they still have the power to do so. And the human aspect of that is, in fact, the most important part of that. And the fact that WikiLeaks has released documents that enable that it is the information sharing that is important. But it is also the people that take that important information and actually move it, because there is at least the argument that we do live in a democracy, that we are free, that it's supposed to be that we are governed through consent. And so if everyone understands what is going on and we find that it is not something we consent to, then it is very difficult to keep up that and just pass those as laws and do it without the consent of those that are governed.
It's about increasing the political costs of taking those bad decisions for the ones who take them.
Yeah.
And we can do that collectively with a free internet as long as we have it between our hands.
Wait.
No.
All right.
Before you go to negative, please.